What's up, everyone? Welcome to part one of New to Gaming on massively multiplayer online role-playing games. So I'm just going to jump right into it, and I'm going to start with WildStar, and then I'm going to show you Guildstar or Guild Wars 2, just to give it a point of comparison. So I'm not going to do much in Guild Wars, but I want you to see that there are a lot of different options out there. So, getting right into it, I think that, yeah, all right. So this is the first screen that you see usually when you get into any of these games. It'll show you a list of the servers that you have to choose from, and usually they're set up in alphabetical order. Sometimes they're set up in regions. So if you look on this list here, it shows that there are what look to be 2 or 3, let's see, probably 15 or so servers that are up. Now, what the server is it's where you create your characters and where you're going to live. They're like little worlds in and of themselves, right? So for the most part, if you create a character on one server and you have a friend on another, you will not see each other, and you won't be able to play together. There are some games like Guild Wars 2 that have mechanisms for overcoming that, but for the most part, you want to pick a server that you know that your friends are going to be on, or you want, when your friends come to join you, you need to tell them what server you're on so that they know and they can play with you. So there are a few options here, and because you're new, you don't really probably know what a lot of these things mean, so I'm just going to go through it. The names of the servers usually come from something to do with the lore or the backstory in the game. I wouldn't worry about any of that. They don't have any meaning in and of themselves, but what type of server they are do. So if you look, there's a type tab right here, and it's either PvE or PvP. Now, PvE is player versus environment, and it's going to be primarily you and your friends running around killing computer-generated creatures and characters and whatnot. Now, PvP is player versus player, and there are certain rule sets in the same way that in each of these worlds gravity applies the same way. Well, in the worlds where PvP is the server type, other players are going to be able to attack you and kill you in most of the world, whereas in PvE, other players will not be able to attack you except for in very specific areas which you have to knowingly go into and sort of engage in that activity. So right there, that's a divide. Personally, I primarily play on PvE servers, but that's something that you want to decide for yourself. Something else you may see, some games show an RP PvE, which means role-playing PvE, and as you can see here, there's a note next to 2 of these servers that are listed here. One is called role-playing, and one is has a note of Oceanic. So a role-playing server is one that is sort of designated, and it's a very soft rule, but it's sort of designated for people who want to do what it says. They actually want to role play. So people will speak to you in character, and they'll have backstories created for their character. They'll have love affairs, and I mean, like, there's a whole subculture within these games where people are sort of virtually living in these worlds as the person, and in order to engage in discussions with them, to do anything with them outside of that bubble, that role-playing sphere, if you will, is to be very specific about when you're talking in character versus when you're talking out of character. For the most part, role-playing servers are nice. For a long time, I used to pick those as the server that I would choose, not because I wanted to do that specifically. I mean, I think early on I did a little bit, but for the most part, I thought that the people on the role-playing servers were nicer people, and they were much less concerned about what's hardcore and what's not, and they're just friendlier. So I would usually opt for that. These days, it's 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other, so I wouldn't worry about it unless that's something that you really want to get into, or you and whoever it is that you're going to be playing with want to get into. So that brings me to my next pointer, and I think I already mentioned it, is as you discuss this with your friends, or if you're going to play with a friend, you want to make sure that they know what server you're playing on, or if they've invited you to play with them, you need to figure out what server they're on so that you can create your character on that server. So just to use this as an example, really quickly, Oceanic, that server is hosted in a different place and it caters to Australia and New Zealand. And so the time zone within the game and the people who are in that server are going to be operating on a certain time zone. That doesn't mean that you living in America or I guess even Europe, although if you're Europe, you've got a whole different set of servers. That doesn't mean that you can't join that server and play with them. Um, Depending on what you do in the game, it may actually be advantageous to you to be on an Oceanic server because the times that you're available to play the game line up with the time zone that Australia and New Zealand are on, right? So if you work the night shift and you're able to play primarily in the early mornings, then you may need to be there because the vast majority of people who are playing will be online at that time, and it'll be easier to find friends, groups, that sort of thing. So anyway, so these are the servers. Right next to it, they've got a population, and so you'll see that some of them are showing as full, some are medium, high. The ones that are full will give you a wait list, and there'll be like a queue to join that server. So I'm not gonna I clicked on it just because I wanted to show you what that looks like. And there's usually a message of some kind and a hamster running on a wheel if you're feeling cheeky. But yeah, so while that thinks about it, different games handle things differently. And while that's working, I'm going to. Oh, it looks like it timed out. So, all right, we're back. There are some technical difficulties there, but we ironed them out. So I'm going to switch over and show the game. All right, so clearly I've already made a character here, but this is what it looks like. If you wanted to change realms, once you've selected one, you select this button, and it takes you here. Avitus is the server that I chose, so we're going to head there. Yeah, so right when you get into it, create a new character. Like I mentioned in the blog, there are factions, and the factions drive what races you have accessible to you. Each one, they're going to have the same number of races, basically. So this is the Dominion. They've got 4 different races. This is the Exile. They have 4 different races. And if you look over here on the right side of the screen, you'll see that it explains every one of your choices there. So you've got the faction information. So if we've chosen Exiles, this tells you what Exiles are, who they are, what they do, the races that you've chosen. So, you know, just so that it looks like something that you can relate to, I'm going to pick a human. The classes would be your next choice. Now, before I get too far from the race, one of the things that the races impact, other than just how you look, is what classes are available to you. Generally in these games, humans can be any class. This goes back to the days of Dungeons and Dragons, so I won't try to explain that. But as you move along, certain races are more prone to, don't ask about this, I don't know, more prone to certain types of classes or certain capabilities. So like the Orin, as an example, are kind of an elfin type of race. And so they're not capable of being warriors or engineers, but they are capable of being basically psionics and stealthy classes and spellcasters. Whereas as a point of comparison, the Granok are very large and made of stone, so they're not able to be any of those 3, but they are able to be warriors, engineers, and medics. So you know, the faction choice dictates what races you have available to you. They're very different, and this may like the specific race may dictate what faction you want to be, right? Because if I want to be a cute furry thing, I have 2 options. I can either be a Chua, but if I want to do that, I have to be on the Dominion, but there's no Chua similar race over here on the Exile. So I'd have to be Dominion in order to do that. So one of these may drive your choice on faction, or if you're just, you know, completely agnostic about it, you just choose your faction and then move on. So I'm going to be a human. I'm going to be an Exile human. I think they're known as basically the rednecks of the galaxy, just based on, if you look at these guys, they're very snooty, and the humans over here are not. And if you get into the game, you'll see that they're very snooty. But these guys are more rednecky and kind of cowboys. So we'll get into the class. We have a lot of different options. Again, you want to just look over on the right. In this game, it's all listed out in text. In other games, it'll explain what what your choices are and what they mean and what these classes, what the implications are, basically, right? So I don't know. So let's be a warrior, and you can see the weapon change over here on the right. So that shows that this weapon for this class is going to be a sword generally. As a point of comparison, the engineer will have a large cannon. Medics have whatever the hell that is. Espers have hand blades. Spell slingers have pistols. So, you know, it gives you kind of an idea of what your gameplay is going to be like. And that's very important because that's going to be your experience. So I'm going to go with a warrior. We're going to use swords. The path, because I'm a warrior, just because it makes sense to me and because this is a mechanic in this game that it doesn't exist in most MMOs. I'm just going to select soldier. Again, over on the right, it tells you what that means, what sorts of missions you'll get in that path. And what might be maybe the more interesting part is the appearance. So once you've chosen your faction, your class, and in this case your path, you get to mess around with what your character looks like. Generally, there's a randomize button, and that'll just give you all kinds of different options thrown together. And personally, I like to click through it a few times just to see what, you know, give me some ideas. So I kind of like, I don't know, I like that hairdo maybe. I don't like the buzz cut. I don't really like that. But so okay, so I'm just gonna move down from the top. All right, that's wow, that's quite a style. All right, so I'm gonna start here. So this is the guy. You get in here, you can zoom in and out with the scroll wheel, change what their face looks like. Now, as I click through these, realize that you're going to be able to change the facial hair, the hair on your head, the color of your eyes, hair, piercings a lot of times. I mean, the level of customizability is impressive. So I'm going to find a facial structure that resonates with me. That looks good. And just so you get a real feel for what I'm talking about, when I say that there's customizable features in this, look at this list of things: mouth, depth, height, size, nose angle. So since we're looking, let's look at the profile and mess with the nose just to give you something that you can see. Nose angle, it's very subtle, but I mean, you're never going to see this in the game unless you stop doing whatever you're doing, turn around, face the camera, and then zoom way in so that you can admire your face. This may not be an abnormal thought to you, but in a game, you're always going to be looking at your rear end and the back of your head. So, but anyway, the thought being is that you can really customize your character. So, all right, we want him to have a bigger nose. The nose will move up or down his face as you can see. So that's a little longer. I like that. Nose length. We can shorten it or lengthen it. And like I said, I like to make it longer. And is it more prominent, less prominent? I like it right around in the middle. And then for the width, you can make it narrow, you can make it wide. You see, there's all kinds of different options, right? So, all right, I'm done messing with that guy's nose, but we'll get back into overall look. Skin colors, you can go from pasty white with freckles to kind of bronzed to black to all various shades of whatever, right? So what you're looking for is almost definitely here. Hair color, do I want black hair? I'm a warrior. Yeah, I've got brown hair, so maybe I'm more inclined to, yeah, I like brown. Eye color, I've got hazel eyes. So what you may find is that you go through here and you make your character look like you. A lot of people I know do that, not only in these games, but in games like Mass Effect too. So it's like, it gives you a way to sort of connect with the character, and I don't know, some games provide enough customizability that you'd be really surprised how close you can make your character look like you. That implies that you're going to have to make yourself a human, whereas if you're a small rodent, you're not going to be able to make your character look like you. So anyway, so that's something that you can do. Personally, I like green eyes and dark hair, and I guess I sort of generally default to that. So I went with brown hair, and I'll click through and find green eyes for that. Facial hair, personally, I'm not a huge fan of it, although there are some times where it works. But if you're really attached to having a mustachio, then you can do that here. But I'm going to go clean faced. I'm going to change my hair. That's kind of a nice style. Clean cut, kind of like mine. Uh, there's always the Bieber look. And if you want to look like an idiot or like someone out of, I don't know, there's always some anime character that looks like this. Either way, there's long hair choices. There's the ponytail. There, the top knot. There's whatever this is. The receding hairline. I may be headed there myself. I guess that's more my hairstyle. But anyway, you have a lot of options, and don't be afraid to experiment and try them out. Personally, I think I'll stick with that one. And then there's body type. And you can see you can make yourself not fat necessarily, but broader, narrower. So I tend for the thinner builds just because I'm a thinner guy and I don't know, it makes more sense to me. So we're looking good now. This is what I like what we're doing here. And this guy looks kind of suave, so um, I'm going to name him Johnny Bravo. No, I won't because I think that's a lame name. All right, so because you're new to this, let me set you off on the right foot. So if you have a name like Buttlicker69, you may be playing this game 2 years from now, and you're going to be in a different place in your life, and everyone in the game, all of the friends you've made, all of the people you come across are going to know you as Buttlicker69. Don't be that guy, okay? Because your name is the one thing that you're not going to be able to change. And so once you've sunk a lot of time and energy into this game and this character, you're going to be loath to completely delete him and start him over with a real name. So you're going to wander around the world as Buttlicker69. So don't get caught in that trap. So we're not going to name him Johnny Bravo because that's kind of stupid. So we might I have a whole post yesterday about naming characters, so this is very difficult for me and it takes a long time, so I'm not going to make you sit through that. But the long and short of it is basically once you create a name, it kicks you into an intro sequence and you go from there. All right, and lastly, I want to show you Guild Wars 2 just so that you can see that there are different art styles that go into these games. Games that have different feels, and it's just an entirely different experience. So we're just talking about creating a character once you've found a game and you're getting into the experience, but the real first step is picking a game. And so generally, if you're new to gaming, you're probably not out shopping around for a game. You've probably got a friend who wants to play with you, and they will probably have already either picked the game or be playing that game and want you to be a part of that with them. And so you won't have to worry about that. But so you know, there are a lot of options out there, and Guild Wars 2 is another one. And just to give you an idea, once I click into the game, you're going to hear all the sound, and it's going to kind of go over my voice. But this is my thief character or assassin basically in Guild Wars 2. You can see all of my other characters listed at the bottom, and I'll click through just to show you what they are. But again, it's the same thing. I picked a server, which is Sorrow's Furnace, which you see down here, and I picked a race, which is the Sylvari, and they're these plant-like elf people of sorts, and my class, which is Thief. So it's all the same basic structure, but the art style is very different. The mechanics in the game are very different, and it's worth experimenting with. So you've probably already got your game picked, but once you get in there, like I said, play lots of different characters if you get the chance. Play on your own to get a feel for things if you have the time to do so or the interest. And you might find something that actually is much more enjoyable to play than what you started with. So it's worth experimenting with. So let me show you a little bit of what we got here. This guy's all decked out because I've spent a lot of time and I'm at the maximum level and I've got all the gear, so he can look pretty decent. But if I click through, see, you know, this game is known for having a very cool art style. And this is a you know, kind of a short and silly looking guy. They're called Asurans. That's another race. There you go. And the class is Necromancer. And, you know, there are some common threads that you'll see throughout various games, but yeah, so this is Guild Wars 2. And it's it's very similar. So all of these MMOs follow the same thread. If you have any questions on all of this, by all means contact me. Let me know. I'd be happy to play with you if you have time, or if you want to kind of dip your toes in the water without getting into it with somebody that you either know better, or you know, to prepare you for playing with friends. I won't embarrass you. We'll go at whatever speed you're comfortable with, and I'm happy to explain anything that I can. So this is part one. This is just character creation. We'll get into how to move around, what to think about when you're new, um, and how best to enjoy the game, kind of as a beginning person, probably next week. So stay tuned. Read the blog or listen to the podcast. It goes hand in hand with what I've been talking about here, and it explains some of the features and some things to think about that the video doesn't get into. So check those out, view them together, and yeah, have a good day, and I'll see you next week.